Okay, so for the first activity in this week's lab, what we're going to look at is taking a look at blood pressure just through the process of oscillation. And so basically listening to the blood pressure using a stethoscope. And so within lab, we're going to have some stethoscopes. They're going to be present for you. Got a variety of blood pressure cuffs. And so basically what you're going to have is going to be a cuff that is going to be able to be opened up. It basically has an air sac or bladder within that. It's going to have a little pump, so you can be able to squeeze the pump, and then associated with this is going to be a little valve, and so you're going to turn the valve clockwise to close the valve and basically kind of pump up the blood pressure cuff. And you're going to turn this counterclockwise to open the valve and allow for kind of release of the pressure. In addition to that, we're going to have a pressure gauge, sphygmomanometer, kind of hard to say. It will basically give you the pressure that is generated by the air bladder within the cuff. Now, we got a couple different examples of blood pressure cuffs here. So the first one is nice because it allows you to go through and kind of identifies where to have the artery if we're doing either a left arm or a right arm. We've also got an example one here, same basic idea, but with this one, the stethoscope is actually built into the blood pressure cuff. And I think I'm going to use that one because it may be a little bit easier for me to do that than trying to hold the stethoscope, the bell of the stethoscope against my artery. And then finally, we've got another example one back here, where again, we've got the pressure gauge. In this case, we're looking at a mercury gauge that's going to go up here. Same basic idea. We've got the blood pressure cuff with a bladder in it. We've got a bulb to pump it up, and we got a valve. Again, closing the valve is going to be rotating it clockwise. And then opening it is going to be turning it counterclockwise. So in order to take the blood pressure within the arms, the first thing we want to do is be able to identify where the brachial artery is. And so the easiest way of finding that is you're going to start out kind of the inside of your elbow. You're going to look at that relationship between the biceps and the surrounding muscles there. Use two fingers and basically kind of feel in that area. And at a certain point, you're going to be able to feel the pulse. And so that is going to be the location of your brachial artery. And so mine is kind of coming in through this position right here. Okay, so using the other type of blood pressure cuff, same basic idea. And so we've got the pressure gauge here, which can either be loose, so you can take a look at it, or it's got a little bit of a strap on here that we can kind of slide it in. I've already threaded the blood pressure cuff itself through this wire thing with the Velcro so that I can do this with one hand. And then looking at this, you can see this out of the way. You can see that you're going to place it with either this line, if we're doing it on the left arm, which I am right here, you're going to put this where our brachial artery was before. If we do it on the right arm, it's basically going to be in a little bit different position. Again, use the Velcro, kind of snug it up. It doesn't have to be overly tight, but you don't want it to kind of flop around. In this case, we don't have a stethoscope attached to that, and so it's going to be a little bit more difficult for me to do with this example. Put the stethoscope in, tap on it slightly. And what you can see is that it's going to rotate about 90 degrees like that. At one point, you're going to be able to hear really effectively. And at the other point, just simply tapping on it, it's going to sound muted. And so in order to be able to use it, to be able to hear the blood pressure, make sure you tap it or turn it and tap it. And so you hear it real well. We're going to put this in that position there. And again, this is not the way to do this under normal circumstances. Put this over our brachial artery, start to pump it up, bring it up to about 180. and then slowly release the pressure. And you're going to listen for the heart sounds, the Korotkoff sounds. Okay, so at this point, I'm hearing the sound starting up at about 135. Hearing the sounds. Okay, now the sounds have gone away at about 85. So in this case, my systolic pressure was in the range of about, I don't remember what it was, I think 135. And the diastolic pressure, the pressure during relaxation of the heart, was on the order, what did I say, about 85. And again, that may be a factor of the way that I'm simply taking the measurements now. You really don't want to do this on yourself. You want to do it with the subject, with your classmates in the lab. And so that's a demonstration of taking your blood pressure using the standard blood pressure cuff and stethoscope. Okay, so for the second activity in lab, what we're going to do is we are going to use our PowerLab system. And so we're going to use the physiology hardware and software that we've used throughout the lab. We're going to do a couple things. The first is that we're going to use a specialized blood pressure cuff. In this case, what we've got is, again, the blood pressure cuff with the bladder like we talked about before. We've got the bulb for inflating it. We can close it by turning this clockwise, close it off. We've got the valve, but in addition to the valve that we can measure here, we've got a pressure transducer kind of built in line with this system. And so that is going to be set up so that we can plug it into our PowerLab system. So in this case, we're going to plug this into input number 1. And so the blood pressure cuff and the pulse transducer is going to go into input 1. And again, it's only going to fit in one way. We are going to use our finger pulse transducer, which we've used previously. And so that is going to plug into input number 2. In addition to that, we're going to use a cardiomicrophone. And so instead of a stethoscope, we're basically going to use something that is going to serve as a stethoscope in this experiment. And so it's basically going to be listening for the heart sounds. Now, what we have to do with this is we have to use a DIN smart adapter. And so this would be either in your case or out on the table for you. And so you're basically going to plug this into the adapter. So this is the cardiomicrophone. And then you're going to plug this adapter into input number 3. Okay, once all of that is hooked up, we are going to turn on our PowerLab system. See all the lights coming on, so we know that everything is working. So once again, open up the LabChart system, double click on the LabChart icon. Once we get into the LabChart Welcome Center, we're going to look for our BP for blood pressure settings files, and we're going to choose our blood pressure settings here. And double click on that, open it up. Okay, so once we've maximized this, we can take a look in channel number 1. We're going to be looking at pressure associated with our blood pressure cuff and the pressure gauge belt within it. Number 2 is going to be our pulse transducer. And then finally, down here in channel number 3, we're going to have the cardiomicrophone. Okay, so we've placed our blood pressure cuff on our arm like we did before. We're going to take our cardiomicrophone and ideally you would be able to hold this. I'm going to try to hold it in position with the blood pressure cuff. Take a look at it. It's solid on one side and it's got a little bit of an opening on the other side. The side with the opening is the one that you're going to want to put against your brachial artery or in that location of the brachial artery. And again, you're going to want to try to hold it there. I'm going to try to do it within the blood pressure cuff because I'm not going to be able to hold it completely. And then put your finger pulse transducer on the middle finger of the hand with the blood pressure cuff attached to it. Again, not too hard, not too tight or not too soft. At that point, we're going to Okay, so we're set up now with everything. And so I've got the blood pressure cuff on my arm. I've got the cardiomicrophone, hopefully held in place on my brachial artery above, or held in place by the blood pressure cuff. And I've got the finger pulse transducer on the middle finger of my hand. Double check, make sure everything looks right. And so we're gonna hit start. Okay, so we got a good pulse wave showing up on channel 2. Tapping on our cardiomicrophone, we can see it giving a little bit of noise down there in channel 3. So I think we're all set and ready to go. And so what we're going to do, again, is close the valve on the bulb here. So turn this completely counterclockwise. I'm sorry, turn this completely clockwise. We're going to start to pump it up. Okay, so in the initial kind of view of this, for some reason, I'm getting negative pressures on channel 1. I'm not quite sure exactly why. And so what we can do is right click on this, go to set scale. And so the scale is normally set at 180. We're changing this to negative 180. And so we've got that, and then we're also going to right click on this, and we're going to invert the scale so that it goes up in the right direction. And so I'm going to hit start. So at this point, no pressure in our blood pressure cuff. We've got a good pulse wave showing up on number 2, channel number 2, and we got the cardiomicrophone over on channel 3. Okay, so everything is set. We are going to start to increase the pressure. And as you can see here, each time I squeeze the pressure bulb, we're going to get an increase in pressure in channel number 1. So we're at about 140 now. Up to 180. And you can see that the pulse has disappeared. And so what we're going to do is slowly release the pressure. And we're going to watch for the cardiomicrophone to pick up on the sounds. Okay, so we can see the Korotkoff sound starting then on channel 3. And so we're seeing kind of return of our pulse wave. And now we've seen disappearance of the sounds with our cardiomicrophone, indicating that we're down below our diastolic pressure. At this point, I'm going to release the pressure and give my arm a break. Okay, so for the analysis stage of this, we've stopped the recording. We're going to kind of tighten this up a little bit. By using our compress horizontal axis here. Slow this out a little bit. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Okay, so what we can see here, let me auto scale this one up at the top. Invert it again. Okay, so what we've got is at this point, our pulse wave in channel number 2 is showing us a good, good pulse force kind of coming through. But gradually, as we increase this pressure, we're going to be compressing the artery, ultimately to the point where we get kind of over. At this point, we have completely blocked off the blood flow in that area. We're going to take it up to about 180. And at that point, we're going to allow for kind of a slow release of the pressure. And so this slow release of the pressure is basically going to be in a situation where we're going to have greater pressure within our blood pressure cuff than within our brachial artery. And so that's completely occluding our brachial artery, interfering with the flow of blood throughout that area. If we kind of zoom in a little bit, so I'm going to expand the horizontal axis a bit. What we can see is at this point over here, We've got the start of our Korotkoff sounds here. So we got the sounds picked up on our cardiomicrophone, and we're starting to see a little bit of blood flow coming into that area. So at that point, we could go up here, and this is going to give us a systolic blood pressure. Not so good for me right now. Systolic blood pressure of about 147. And so I've been taking my blood pressure a couple of times and trying to do this on my own. So it's probably not the best indication of it right there. And so, you know, we're about 145 for my systolic blood pressure. Moving down towards, I'm going to auto scale this on the bottom. So we're auto scaling our cardiomicrophone here. And so kind of hearing the first of the sounds kind of at this point right here. This corresponds to 147 millimeters of mercury for our systolic pressure up at the top. And we're going to start to see the pulse returning at that point. We're going to continue on listening for our Korotkoff sounds. And at this point over here, we are decreasing our blood pressure. And so probably at this point right here, we're seeing the Korotkoff sounds, and it's basically going back into background. So at this point here, what's going to happen is this is going to be our our diastolic pressure, the pressure during relaxation of the heart. For me right now, this is going to give me about 91 millimeters of mercury. And at this point, what's going to happen is that the pressure within our brachial artery is greater than the pressure on our blood pressure cuff. And so we're going to have regular flow of the pulse beyond that point, regular flow of the blood beyond our blood pressure cuff.